towards a decision or an action item, and the open meeting law does not allow for that. So what I've told the boards that I advised in the past, because the open meeting law, sometimes it feels a bit cumbersome, a bit, the whole Robert's Rules of Order thing, it's kind of tedious to hold natural conversations. But really that's what the board should be doing, is just having a conversation about the action items here in the meeting rather than beforehand. And I know it's super tempting to want to reach out to other board members, get their take on things before the meeting. But the whole purpose of the open meeting is so that the public can be a part of that process and be aware and just kind of see what you're thinking. So I tell the other boards that I advise that this is really your chance to think out loud and ask questions, and that whole deliberation process should take place here in the meeting rather than beforehand, because that's, again, the whole purpose of the public meeting. So with that said, I'll turn the time over to you, Superintendent.
Okay, thank you for that. And the recommendation is that we make, we can have the cure as a way, if there's any thought that there was no action taken, but items were listed that might be construed as leading any conversation or action ahead of the meeting, and that we just make the emails a part of the public record. And then Adam, as far as an official cure to that, do you feel like making the email information a part of the record of our meeting today? Does that satisfy any legal requirements or a cure, so to speak?
Yeah, so all the public meeting law says in situations like this, says that a violation may be cured by a public agency upon the agency's self-recognition. If the violation happened in a meeting, then any action taken in that meeting would be void. But since these weren't really an official meeting,
and no action was taken. It doesn't get to that step. But for sake of transparency, I think it's best that these emails are read aloud so that the public is in on the conversation and knows what was discussed via email. And I do have the emails, although I'm not sure that I Allison, that just want to make sure. Which one? This is this one. Oh, gotcha. Okay. So the first one, just panelists and OSB staff. This is for documentation purposes for our meeting today. Please don't reply. We can discuss in the meeting. In reviewing the minutes, there was one section of the July meeting that was omitted, which I feel is important to include because it deals with the ineligible purchases. I've attached a proposed amendment to the July minutes. I copied the paragraph of the minutes and inserted the documentation about the accountability of ineligible purchases. So we good with that? Adam, want me to?
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably good to include the attachment just as a.
And I don't have a question with you, but we can include the attachment.
Yeah, include that in the meeting minutes.
Today's minutes and business. Okay. And then follow-up email to that. Please don't reply to my email. This is just for discussion during approval of draft minutes. One, I don't see the edit for the amended June minutes. They look exactly like the first draft minutes. 2, July minutes, 20 open grant spots that were going to be released. Homeschool concern with parents being required to show a doctor note and or curriculum. Are we asking for too much data from homeschool families? I asked for follow-up on the process with homeschool special education verification. I wanted to know what the state was requiring from these parents. 3, August 8, panel discussed recommendation of expanding program to offer tutoring, co-op fees 501c3 separate sports, classes, and fees, adding vendors, homeschool co-ops, private schools, teachers. Panel voted 4-3 in favor of reimbursements. August 4th, August 17th, I move to amend the agenda posted to include between 3 and 4, a panel-led discussion on parent feedback, vendor feedback, and contractor feedback. I move to table the minutes until our next meeting due to us receiving the minutes that morning. Allison added that the minutes had been sent to the EP email instead of our individual emails. See email from 7:46 a.m. August 17th, 2023. Mr. Hill was told to send us feedback for the panel to Allison, and she would send that feedback to the panel. Homeschool special education parent concern was addressed. Parent concerned that they are being asked to share a doctor note and curriculum. Panel voted to have strengths, weaknesses, and improvements piece of the Facebook survey added to the minutes. Point of clarification, we do not have the authority to make decisions to change to program in real time. I want it noted that I question amending the motion from subsection G to F. If we are making recommendations, this is not necessary. Jen asked for the amendment to make changes now. The panel was told that no changes would be made now, only recommendations for future changes that could be made to the legislation. Panel member made it clear they did not want to be asked to vote on something that would supersede current legislation. They were assured that this was not the case, and they were only voting on recommendations for the board and sponsors to look at in the future. I move that the panel recommend that the grantees that were approved and then later found to be ineligible items be allowed back into the program. Good.
I think we're okay. It may be a good idea to include these as appendices to the meetings as well.
Okay. That sounds good. And then we don't have to have motions on that. We've read, we will, or is there a motion to approve these as appendices, or we just do that?
I think you can just do that.
Great. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate you coming and helping us navigate. I know transparency is as important to all of you as it is to me and everybody else, and we just want to make sure that we stay on that track. So thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate that. And let me get my agenda going. So with that, welcome again. You've all had the opportunity to take a look at our agenda. And I would accept the motion to approve the agenda as presented. So moved. Thank you. Second. And second, moved by Holly, seconded by Amy. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I think I heard ayes or saw lips moving. So we will move forward then. We do have an action item, and I guess I'll remind the panel that we've made everything actionable, knowing that sometimes we just didn't want to limit ourselves, that we'd have to say, wait for next time or wait for whatever. So we have made everything actionable. That doesn't mean we have to act on something. And so if there are concerns with our minutes, we just don't act on them. So we don't have to have a motion to not approve. We can, make whatever changes we need to make. And if we want to wait until our meeting in Lewiston to do that, that is also completely fine. So discussion of the minutes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would move to amend July 10th minutes. The first email read into the record was mine. I apologize for breaking the law. Certainly don't need to. What the intent was for emailing is the verbiage that I'm asking to be inserted. So I included that verbiage, which has already been read aloud, so I won't, well, actually, the attachment wasn't read aloud. So it's just a section that discusses about how ineligible purchases were made and whose fault it was. We had a discussion about that, and then at a later meeting, we had clarification. So I wanted it to be included in that in minutes.
Thank you. Let's anything else on July 10th while we're opening that one up.
Just
Amy?
Madam Chair, part 2 of mine, forgive me, my email. Part 2. And just add.
Yeah.
Part 2.
For July 10.
Yes. please.
Yeah, yes.
Would you like me to read through that again or?
No,
Is it
we've
okay
got
that I
it, and
just
I
say-
think Tate and Taylor's got it as well. So, and just as a note, when you notice, which we're not gonna be able to get, I mean, we're not court reporters that are, verbatim. So, Taylor's doing an awesome job trying to keep up with all the conversation. When you find things like that, please email her or Allison, you contacting a staff member or even myself individually, totally great. Totally great to do that. We're not trying to discourage corrections or anything like that. Adam, am I correct in
Yeah.
saying that? Okay, wonderful. So we can make those adjustments. So anything else for the July meeting? Okay. And I didn't see anything specific to June. Were there any concerns about the June regular meeting? Katie?
Madam Chair, just in June, we had made that amendment during the second meeting, just to add the FTE piece. And I didn't see any changes in the new draft. Were there? I didn't see it,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's at the very end, the very last page.
Thank you. I compared them and I couldn't find it, so maybe I just didn't.
Okay, but you've got.
But it is there, you
yes,
have
I
it.
have proof, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
send them to you. Okay. All right, so our June, the July, and then our August 8th work session. And we've got
Madam
Amy,
Chair,
you've got
section
some,
3.
okay? Taylor, you've got that one.
Yeah, I'll add it.
Okay, anything else? I'm looking up on the screen, corrections, additions for the August 8th work session. And then that'll take us then, a couple weeks ago, our meeting in Rexburg on the 17th.
Madam Chair, section 4 of my email, please.
So-
From here on out, I will email Taylor.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So, we've read the email publicly, and so it's out there. So I guess I would ask the panel, as you looked at that, number 4 on your email, is there anything that you have concerns about? Amy's requesting that there'd be some additions there. Any concerns? Everybody kind of looks like Barb. She's either looking at that or watching you.
I was looking at it on my screen.
I'm teasing you. I know where you
I'm watching television.
are.
Probably the one, Madam Chair, if I may, really important on that recommendation that the panel recommended that the grantees were approved and then later found to be ineligible, that we wanted them allowed back into the program. So that wording was really important.
Okay, and I know that we've got, and we've got some potential action that we can take on that as a recommendation, just in general. But so Amy, this recommendation, or as you recall this being a part of the discussion, the recommendation was for the current program, correct?
Right, those that were in the program.
Okay. Are we good on that panel as you look at that as capturing a way to capture what we were talking about? Okay, so I'll make a stab at stating the motion that someone could make. So approval of the minutes would include the changes as presented, both verbally and written, for our 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings.
That motion.
Or first it, make it.
I move to
Okay.
amend the minutes
as read and written.
Perfect.
I'll second that.
Second by Amy. Discussion of the motion.
I would just like to thank everybody for their patience, help, and understanding.
You bet.
We're here to, we're doing good stuff.
Yes, we
and
are.
We appreciate you as volunteers taking this on. And so I don't want all of this to have a chilling effect on our discussion. That's what we're here to do. And I appreciate Adam really emphasizing that this is the place to talk about all of these things. And so we want to continue to set that tone and environment. Any other discussion of the motion related to the minutes? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I can read everyone's lips that time. We are in unanimous in favor. We do have someone who has reached out that would like to address the panel.
They are not on the Zoom call. I don't know if they're here in the room today. It doesn't look like it. So they've not joined the Zoom call yet.
Well, I think we're flexible. Is the panel willing to be flexible enough that if, I believe it's a gentleman that is coming on, Allison, is that right?
Yeah, Mr. Scott Burns,
Okay.
he's representing Home Science Tools.
Okay,
He's a vendor that's currently in the program.
that we could maybe work around that a little bit. Would that be all right with everybody if we see him come
Yeah.
on? We won't maybe interrupt our sentence, but we can make some adjustments. Item number 4 is a request coming from upstairs, and Matt and or Heather, I mean, I can certainly kick it off, but Heather, would you be willing to introduce it for the panel? We've got some decisions that would be helpful for the administration of those that are currently in the program. I know at times, even for myself, it has been confusing as we're talking about what we want to do moving forward, people that are currently in the program. And so those that are overseeing the program have a few items of consideration for the panel that will help them for the folks that are currently in the program. So with that, Heather, let's move this chair. Holly, do you want to?
No, Superintendent, some of these recommendations here are also listed in recommendations on the rubric that was shared out.
Okay.
As well.
Okay. So just so as, okay,
Going
so some
through-
actions may lead into other things that have been part of the discussion so far. So with that, Heather.
So everyone received a copy of this in the meeting materials. It's from the State Board of Education. And it lists out those 1, 2, 3, 4 specific categories that we need your recommendation on, camps and classes. And you'll see the asterisk, that's the first one. And if you read the asterisk below, currently we have been denying people that have been requesting to become vendors of classes until this is sorted out. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. Once we have a clear recommendation and can get that approved by the board and hopefully the October meeting, then I have been communicating to all those vendors that they can come back and reapply. But then the second category is educational equipment. So currently we are not approving anything like a backpack, a computer case that would fall under that category. Physical education, similar, and costumes and uniforms that you might use for like dance class or whatever. So I just want to make that clear that we are seeking that you guys consider those as recommendations. If not, then we will just continue to not include them on the online marketplace. The next one is relating to how we are reviewing all of the current items. And we do that on a daily basis. I think we've been talking about that. And since August, the Odyssey staff looks at them daily, our staff looks at them daily. So we can make sure that everything that's being purchased is an eligible expense. And if they're not, then parents are denied and those purchases are not, the transactions aren't even happening. But for the items that did get purchased, parents who made ineligible purchases between November and July, of 23. They were contacted to submit their additional reasonings, is what we are calling it in the system, to support that purchase. We have reviewed the first batch of those, the State Board of Education, and we've either confirmed that they'd be eligible or ineligible, and we've notified the parents, and the language is in here. But just to call out, it's these purchases between November 22 and July 23. They will not be permanent. They have been told they're not permanently removed from the program. They do not have to repay for the cost of that item, and they can use any funds if they still have them. So those notifications have already been going out for the parents that made those purchases. So do you guys have any questions?
Thanks so much for this information. It's really clear. Super appreciate that. Thank you. I just wonder if you mentioned that any additional classes are being denied now. Is that vendors?
Vendors, yeah.
Additional
So
vendors,
if you're a vendor seeking to get onto the online marketplace right now, for classes, you're not allowed. And I'll say the current vendors on the marketplace that are looking to add more classes, we're not allowing that. We are keeping it status quo for right now until we get this sorted out. And we've been doing that since July.
So if I could put a little more meat on the bones to sort it out. So again, as a panel, our charge has been to take, so the program was put into place by way of state funds a year ago. State funds a year ago. It was ongoing. or
Federal funds.
Federal
Yeah.
funds a year ago, and state funds were
Moving
ongoing,
forward.
moving forward. Which is why we came into existence by way of the code was, okay, now that it's ongoing money, how do we want this to look? And so Heather and the board team, they've been operating strictly by very ambiguous statute. And so they've been, trying to kind of feel their way through of, well, do we think it's this? Do we think it's that? We're not sure. And so the request of the panel right now is to help them know how to apply some of the things that have been in this. We're not sure because it wasn't laid out in statute, and we didn't have the benefit of the panel to help really guide us through. And so if the panel is inclined, this will help them know how to help people that are in the program.
Correct.
So Amy, let me get Jason and then Barb, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you. As far as classes, do we have any idea for accountability for these classes?
What kind of accountability?
Whether they're actually taking the classes or what kind of a class that it is?
I would know what type of class they are. I don't have attendance records to know if a student is actually.
Could you give examples of what types of classes are being
Sure,
requested?
like martial arts or art classes, music classes, dance classes. But I wouldn't know if they're actually
Showing up.
I wouldn't have access to that information.
Jason, did you have anything else on that?
No, just if we don't have any kind of follow-up for classes, then anybody could say they're putting on a class. And that would make me inclined to vote against this.
Barb?
Thank you. I kind of piggyback a little bit on what Jason said. I was going to ask what type of classes they are, because that just seems so broad. You can in one breath think it's a class of music or it's a art class or something that might supplement the school education, but then to also, we're talking about dance. It just seems very broad, and it would make it difficult for me to give a blanket approval or disapproval.
Well, and this panel certainly has the latitude to define some of what these things are. I'm seeing Matt's head shake, yes, so I'm on the right track. That classes mean, you know, this, that, or the other. Jen's also saying yes. So there's room for some guidance here to say classes as defined by these things.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Heather, so my question is a little more broad, I guess. I'm wondering if what we've done so far has helped with, as far as saying if they've made an ineligible purchase, it wasn't eligible and then it was deemed ineligible, and us saying, allowing them to stay in the program. If these types of things have helped you thus far, and what can we do to help you to make this easier in the long run besides with these recommendations? What other things can we do?
I wasn't prepared to answer that question. This would really help, right? And I think if you guys could. So what this represents in my world is the gray area, right?
Yes.
And, you know, even other states tackle this with these types of programs. So really we've done a better job of setting the guardrails around the online marketplace and the platform, so purchases aren't, you know, being made. But then I think this is our next step. So the vendors are clear, the contractor, you know, Odyssey is clear, we're clear, parents are clear of what they can and cannot do. And for classes in particular, I was gonna try to pull it up, but I could get the information to you guys. I mean, I think I can understand the hesitancy with Jason, but I think it is a pretty good opportunity for parents to utilize, you know, the classes, because you know, that would also, the YMCA could fall under that. And, you know, I think a lot of parents are using the program that way. So we don't necessarily have no oversight on it. We have been putting into place some assurances to make sure that they, you know, have a drug-free workplace, that they have done a criminal history check, so it's a safe environment. And you know, I leave it to it. I can't make the decision in a vacuum, and that's why I'm excited that you guys can have a voice in this.
So Heather, would you say the ones that are kind of in this limbo spot, that these are the 4 categories that it's you're unsure because it's kind of sorta is something, but there's nothing to find.
Yeah.
And there's some that just stick out to you as this definitely is outside of what the statute is. But we've got this group in this middle place where there hasn't been any definitions around any of it.
Yeah, I mean, classes are not clearly defined in the statute, so this would be wonderful if we could have that played out. And camps as well, you know, we're not doing camps. And there's a lot that I think parents want that, but you know, if we have the guidance and approval, then we could really develop what that looks like.
I think as an educator, it's easy for me to say, I can write a lesson plan for a camp. I can write a lesson plan for basketball, I can write a lesson plan for ballet, I can write a lesson plan for swimming, I can write a lesson plan for theater, Spanish. And kids gain knowledge from all of that. They learn and develop and grow from all of that. And so for me, it's really easy to say that kids would benefit from camps in these types of classes. So for me, this is easy because I can see kids at any age learning and growing from this. So this is easy for me.
Thank you, Holly.
I just want to say that I appreciate that you guys have made the decision to not penalize parents, because that for me was where I was digging my heels in for the last few meetings is the consequence is so drastic that they can no longer have funds. So for me, it removes the scariness of making decisions for the people currently in the program. I see the value of doing that because if we don't, then we're going to have all these appeals come that are all similar, right? So I see value in that. To Amy's point that you just made, I think we do need to have a discussion about defining it, what classes and camps are, because we could have burlesque dancing or something that the community might consider inappropriate, be a part as a vendor. And so a definition would help stop those types of inappropriate classes that we might have leak into the marketplace and have a fair standard to be applied throughout. But I personally don't have any problem with enrichments or classes at all. I think we should allow, community education that the school districts offer, the YMCA classes. I think it should all be part of the program. That's just my opening.
Amy?
Madam Chair, I thought to what Barb had talked about in our last meeting with being so close to Spokane, and something that I really thought about. And Barb, I really appreciated that because I can see where a basketball camp or a theater camp or something outside the state really might benefit our students. It might be a better camp or might have better availability to our students. And so I'm open to that as well.
Thanks for bringing that up. That was something that has been talked about. It's just kind of up here in the north to make sure we're offering as many opportunities as possible. And yeah, most of our camps and classes and that type of thing is going to come out of Spokane for most of the northern, probably 8-10 counties for a larger, and to have those schools available. So thank you for recognizing that. It was, we're small up here.
The beauty of having the panel members come from all different sorts of places around the state. Jason, did I miss you?
No, Holly covered pretty much what I was going to say. Thank you, Holly.
Feeling the direction of the panel going towards classes and the approval of that, camps and classes, which is also, if you look on your page 5 of our working sheet for eligible expenses, that is an A there. And so that is something that the group has been talking about as we've gathered, different discussion points. How would you like, do you want to define that? Or do you want to leave it very broad? What are your thoughts on that?
Madam Chair,
Amy?
can we ask Heather and Jen, since you're the ones working with it,
Ask away.
what I know we do not, I'm hearing what you're saying, Holly, we want to be careful. We don't want to leave this, we don't want to create a problem,
Mhm.
right? So do you have a recommendation for us? Matt, maybe, do you want some parameters around this?
Well,
I'm trying to think as well.
Either it's going to be wide open, any class or camp. I think that if we try to put up side rails, it's going to be difficult.
And you've got to monitor, you have to police every single type of class,
I'm not suggesting that's not the right approach to take, but I think that adds complexity.
Right.
and adds another layer probably of administrative scrutiny, which you're trying to get away from.
Well, we already make sure that it falls between, K to 12, so that's already there.
That's probably a good question. What already, so safe
Yeah.
environment,
Yeah.
Drug-free.
The two assurances have to be there. The age range has to be appropriate, and we just check their LLC status, so
okay.
And really, we
those
just
are there.
allow the parents to be parents, right?
That sounds like some fairly good basic assurances, age appropriate, K-12, safe, drug-free environment. You're looking that it's a legitimate LLC.
It's a legit business, yeah. I mean, like content wise, it's hard.
So probably,
For a motion, could we move to approve? I would move that we recommend that the State Board of Education allow educational camps and classes offered for a fee, but reserve the right to deny any classes they deem inappropriate.
Okay, well, the motion has been
Yeah,
made.
yeah.
Yes, let's make the motion. Second to the motion. Okay, there's been, but now let's discuss. So, Holly, your thinking on the last part of that would be,
Just in case there's something that comes up, that they reserve the right to reject a certain class based on its content.
something that just seems blatantly,
Like, I think it would have to be pretty egregious, right?
okay.
So
Thoughts?
And there may be something in code, right? We do have some code.
would that include religious camps?
Good question.
No, it's not in code.
I don't know that you can. I don't know. God, I'm looking at you on this.
Yeah.
Can you deny?
That's-
Could you deny it that for?
No.
But we allow parents to purchase religious curriculum, so why would we
There you go.
not allow them? I mean,
I'm good with that. If there's precedence on religious curriculum, then I think that's fine for a church camp.
Yeah, I don't think we should discriminate.
We'd be using public funds for a religious curriculum or camp. I mean,
The curriculum, it sounds like, has already taken place. And so this would be, I guess, a companion to that if, I don't know how you deny the curriculum or approve curriculum and then deny something else, but Joni, did you have something? I didn't want to miss you.
Yeah, I do not want to exclude religious curriculum or camps, whatever. I think instead of the word, I don't remember how was it inappropriate? How did you finish that up, Holly?
Just reserving the right to deny any classes the state board deems inappropriate.
So maybe we go back to the state statute and it already explains what would be considered more like I would go more towards like the pornographic or sexual content. And I know there is state statute out there that already defines that. I just don't have it on here.
Okay, Barb and then Amy.
thank you. And I'm the only panel member, but I did just want to voice my thoughts that I don't think that taxpayer dollars should be used to fund religious curriculum or materials. It's just another slippery slope in my point of view.
Taxpayer dollars, taxpayer dollars already goes to fund religious universities. Just
I'm
put
my opinion.
that out there.
Okay. Matt?
I think that we would just, this would need to be reviewed by the AG's office in light of Article 9, Section 5.
Okay.
Constitution.
Could we maybe,
Adam, how do you feel about that right now?
could we maybe just
Welcome to the
amend,
party.
could you maybe do a friendly amendment to just say educational camps and classes offered by the independent vendors?
Say that
I
again.
didn't include the independent vendors part just for a fee.
What if we put in there the harmful materials that is in state code? Don't have that code right in front of me.
Or something.
We really can't hear you, Amy.
Sorry, I was wondering if we couldn't just amend it to include the state statute with the harmful to minors code instead.
Material harmful to
Yeah,
minors.
material harmful to minors.
I think, was that passed? I think that was just.
So there's a code definition of harmful to minors. I don't have that in your,
I'm trying to think of what that would be.
I know,
So
maybe more broad.
we do still have a motion on the table. We're still discussing. It is also possible that the panel move forward approving the camps and classes offered for a fee. That would allow Heather the opportunity to free up some people that are kind of stuck. The panel can take a look at all of that. I mean, it's possible that the recommendation for existing people and a recommendation for the future program, you let people see what's happening with the money, and then, you know, then come back and say, hey, now it's sort of, you know, again, we're building this as we're going. And so I think you could free it up or allow people, see how people are using it. And then your recommendation to the board for the future program could include something more along the lines of what you're saying after we check with the statute. Have something that works for this program now, let's free it up. Then recommendation going to the board in October could have a little more to it than that, as a suggestion. Because really, without looking, you know, we don't know every single thing. Holly?
That's a great point. I think my motion probably needs to be worked on a little bit. So I'm gonna withdraw it, and anyone else can make another motion, or, you know, we can work together. But I just think that we need to make a clearer delineation between classes and private tuition, because I think that can be easily construed to mean that you can pay for any class at a private school. And so we just need to define that somehow, unless, you know, the panel thinks that private school tuition should also be included, then it's moot. But I would not be in favor of that. So at this point, I think the legislature needs to make that decision, and we should probably operate within the confines of how the laws are written now. And if they open that floodgate, then we would include that at that time. That's just my point.
Okay, thank you. So the motion has been withdrawn, so we'll continue the conversation, and we may get, as we talk a little bit more, Barb, to the motion, if that works. Barb?
Thanks, Holly. I think you made a great point about how that line between tuition and classes could be blurred, so that should be better defined. But Heather, I always feel so bad. We keep asking you for further information, but do you think you could give us maybe a quick summary, not right now, but maybe before our next meeting, of what some of these classes are that have been a little harder to black and white approve? Or if you could just give us a list of what some of these classes are. I mean, camps to me seem a little bit easier to define, but classes, if you could maybe just shoot us an email with maybe 10 samples that are varied samples, that'd be great.
As just for timeline part of this, the request for the panel's action or consideration of these things.
Oh, that's today.
Right, that, I mean, we can still give you that information, but it doesn't help them for the people that are kind of in this gray area.
Yeah. Okay, I get that.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, because it says educational, I'm good. So I'd like to move that we recommend that educational camps and educational classes offered for a fee by independent vendors be approved.
Is there a second to the motion?
I would second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion of the motion.
Madam Chair, I'm not a board member, but just from a legal standpoint, I think that is a good question on the religious classes. And sometimes, I know I gave my spiel at the beginning of the meeting and said this is the time to brainstorm and think out loud, and you guys are doing a fantastic job at that. But sometimes boards don't have the information they need to make a decision in the meeting. So when that happens, a lot of times I advise them to table that discussion until the next meeting and do a homework assignment. Say, you know, so-and-so is gonna research this. We're gonna reach out to the AG's office and see what they think about this, or whatever the case may be. And when we have that information and come back and make a better decision on this, we'll do that in our next meeting. So we can table this and do it in the next meeting. I'm not telling you whether that's appropriate to do right now, but just throwing that out there if that's something that
Okay.
you want to consider.
So knowing that so I guess again, this is where we have one foot on the side of the fence for the current program and one side of the fence with the future program. Recommendations are just recommendations, but specifically for this one, the board office is looking for something that says, do this or don't do that. Correct, Matt? Okay. So, yes, Allison.
Would it be beneficial to just have the panel discuss each of these points and make one motion on this agenda item number 4, and then we can go into the merits of some of these for future?
Okay, at least 2 people are, I guess, just to discuss each one. Okay, well, can the motion, I'm trying to think of how to work through the legal question
And again,
of religious materials.
sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. Again, there's a motion and a second. You can discuss further and amend that motion, or the panel can vote on that motion.
Okay, well,
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
For a substitute motion, I would move that we table any discussions that might tread on religious versus public dollars until the next meeting.
okay. I think when our next meeting is, what is it, 2 weeks? Next week?
Next week.
That feels like it should be next month, but I mean, like, we're just moving through the month. Oh, okay, so I gotta think about this. So there's a substitute motion.
And Madam Chair, since we have the motion and the second out there, we either need to vote on that or
Right.
withdraw before
Okay,
another motion.
so
Not
let's,
for a substitute motion. For a substitute motion, it just has to be seconded and then it takes the place of the other.
okay.
Well, I'm gonna withdraw.
Okay, so the first motion has been withdrawn.
I'm wondering if we don't, I mean, how can we even proceed on anything?
Well,
I think there's a lot of
yeah,
other-
I think there's some other things.
There's a lot of other ones. I think we could get guidance and come back next.
So
time.
specifically on camps and classes, okay, well, let's do this. Are you withdrawing your motion?
Yeah, I withdrew my motion.
Okay, so we've got that withdrawn. And then,
And then I'm gonna ask that we have a meeting with the AG's office, I guess, because we're going to need to address the claim amendment and all sorts of things.
so,
And it sounds like a whole lot of the Empowering Parent Program grants need to be put on hold. If that's, I mean, is that what you're hearing? That's what I'm hearing.
what,
I mean, if.
well, I don't think so. I mean,
That is with curriculum, and is
yeah,
that
you know,
the
I'm not
same?
sure on that, but I think,
So it's homeschool parents, like, I'm assuming it's parents that are homeschooling their children or purchasing curriculum through the platform.
Because that hasn't been addressed at all at this point, so I'm sitting here a little stunned, quite stunned, actually.
Well, I think our recommendation is really not the decision, so it's ultimately up to the board, so they can
Right.
do,
yeah,
you know, whatever they want now. But we can just have the discussion with more fully formed. Mr. Freeman brought up Article 9, Section 5, thank you. Maybe if we just have an AG's opinion about that as to the ramifications of any recommendations that we make, and we can make fully formed recommendations next time on the 21st.
yes.
Sound good to everybody?
I'm just, yeah. Okay, I'm just looking at what else we've got as bullet points on here,
So I don't think that would impact the educational equipment or physical education equipment.
I just believe, Madam Chair, if it was a concern of the AG, this Empowering Parent Grant and what's been paid out, the AG would have told us it was a concern.
So, yeah, okay, again, we've got one foot
things
on
going.
each, right, two things happening. So the panel, so on our page 5, the panel can still recommend that educational camps and classes, you can have that motion as a recommendation going forward to the board in October.
Right.
That can be a recommendation because, as you pointed out, that's what it is. They can do it, not do it.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll get everybody in motion on what is legal, what is not. So in that sense, Amy, your motion is still, it's still good as a, so let's put that off as a recommendation for 5 and let's just concentrate right now on number 4. I'm trying to figure out how to sort all this out too on the fly.
Yeah.
And so the concern is on religious camps and classes, on whether or not there is a current statute which would preclude that from happening.
Madam Chair, can I interject one more time? Because I feel like I just put the brakes on this meeting, and that was totally not my intention. This is not my area of expertise. Like I said, I got called in here as a substitute attorney. So if someone has already spoken to this issue, or if the board or the panel feels comfortable moving forward with this, it was not my intention to put the brakes on.
This has been the direction and the conversation of the panel for several months. And so there is, the Board of Education is not going to break the law. So there's that.
Mhm.
So we can act on these 4 items if you choose. They're not going, if more information is provided tomorrow that says, oh yeah, now we can't do that, it doesn't reflect poorly on the panel. It's we're acting with the information that we have now. There can be additional information. This allows Heather to be able to go and work through parents that are stuck on whether or not they can move forward on their things. And so I think that we can find a happy place here, which is the panel can say, yes, we think that parents can be opened up to these things or not. And then Matt and company will determine what parts of the law make that happen or not. Matt, is that something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, make a similar comment here from the peanut gallery, that we could, I think the panel could go ahead and make recommendations on each of these 4 bullet points. The sectarian, non-sectarian issue will have to be addressed by the AG's office, and however they fall on that will inform this recommendation going forward. But you can still, at a high level,
Right.
say go, no go.
Okay. How do you feel about that? Is that, I mean, for me, that provides a comfort level that we're not stuck. No offense to the attorneys, but waiting for the wheels of the attorneys. The panel can say, hey, we generally feel comfortable allowing parents to use the funds for these categories. The board will follow the law. I mean, that just will happen.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's what I was trying to say. I don't think it's our place to tell parents how to parent. That's their job to do that. I think it's our place to say, yes, absolutely. Educational camps, educational classes, let the parents do that. And the attorneys can sort it out later.
Okay.
Follow up, great point. I think that the flip side of that is that the argument is that taxpayers, all of taxpayers, not just parents, are funding this program. And we all have the right to freedom of religion, but also freedom from religion. So the flip side is that, some folks may not want their public dollars funding religious curriculum, classes, etc. So I think it's a point well made, but that's just the opposing perspective as well. So I think the point remains that we need to consider that at some point as to whether we advocate that or not. Your comments clear that up for me, at least, that we can make a recommendation and they'll sort of apply it however. So if you want to renew your motion, I'd support your motion. Okay. Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think the motion, if we say educational camps and educational classes offered for a fee by independent vendors, be recommended.
Okay.
I feel comfortable with that.
Is there a second?
I would second.
Thank you, Jason. All right. Discussion of the motion. We've
I think
discussed
having
it.
that educational in there helps. We're asking that it be educational, that the kids are learning, whether it be physical education, academic.
I added that on my sheet too.
One last discussion on the motion would just be that context not to include private tuition. The discussion here.
Yeah, I
right?
think that
Because
that's a step,
separate.
yes,
Yeah, it
that's
is.
how I see that the private tuition and fees are a completely separate point in this, and hasn't been requested by the board
It is not
as,
an approved expense right now, not objective, so
Gotcha.
if that were to change, we need to come.
okay, but for the
channels.
existing program, that is outside of what the panel's been asked to review. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And I saw unanimous, we are unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, and I'm also going to, on our sheet, Allison, you're recording everything, so we don't double up on our motions. Okay, so then we've got 3 other items, which there has been a suggestion, if you feel like you're comfortable enough, we could combine them, or if you need to take time or want to take time. Any specific concerns, questions on equipment? You can see on the notes, backpacks, computer cases. I did like seeing tools for science labs, you know, that there are other things that are included.
We have a question online.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you, Barb.
Hey, thanks. So educational equipment to me has always seemed, pretty simple things the kids need to excel at school and do that type of thing. But the slippery slopes that have always kind of been a little concern of mine have been the physical equipment, the education equipment, and the costumes and uniforms. Just, again, it goes back to kind of the point Holly made earlier, which is this is taxpayer dollars, and it's very important that we be stewards of that money. And all I can think of is all of the things that I've had to spend money on my kids' extra sports that are outside of school. And I understand what you're saying, Amy, in terms of, we let parents parent, but it's one thing to start thinking about maybe a dance uniform or soccer cleats, but then it can expand into, say, skis or a really expensive baseball bat. And that open-ended approval of sports equipment to me I would love to see some sort of limitations, which I cannot suggest right now what would be appropriate. But just a blanket approval to me just doesn't seem like being very good stewards of our taxpayer dollars.
Madam Chair, Barb, I'm with you, as you've heard me over the last couple of months. I'm very concerned about that. I had a constituent contact me about $500 Air Jordans. I'm not sure how we put caps on those things, and I don't want to limit a student from participating in basketball or ballet because they can't afford the uniform or the shoes or the ballet outfit. And so I've struggled with this. I don't know how to make this work. And I don't know how we put a cap on it. I don't know what that looks like. And so I've struggled with it too. And you know how I feel about the lunchbox. I can't get past the lunchbox. My poor neighbor lady next door, she can't buy her prescriptions. And so I can't ask her to buy lunchboxes. So that one I just can't get over. But I've gotten past they may need a computer backpack to protect their computer. I've got that. I'm trying to get past that. So science supplies, I love that. I'm glad that's added in there. But I don't want a child to not be able to participate in sports or karate, and whatever it is, swimming lessons, because they can't afford the uniforms. And so I think that we need to allow that. But I don't know how to put a cap on it, and I don't know how to make that easy for the board.
I think there's a natural cap in the fact that parents, they receive so much money.
Right,
And if you choose to use your funds, you know, as a parent, I will likely use them different than you and than you. And I think that's the beauty of the program is that the cap is we all get the same amount of money. And if I choose to use $500 of that money on athletic shoes for my child, which I would never do that, but anyway, you get the point of it, then you know, I'm limiting other opportunities for my kids. And so I think if we look at it as the program itself has built-in guards in that everyone gets the same amount and how we decide to use it is gonna look a little bit differently, and we may or may not agree with maybe how our neighbor used it. But that was a decision that they made. I mean, that's kind of how I worked it through in my mind a little bit. Jason?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Critchfield. I would agree with what you were just saying. My point, I would be in favor of all three of these items. I think the more we open it up on the lower end, the more lower income families will apply for this grant, and you will see better participation in some of these across the board. So thank you. I'll be voting yes for this.
Barb? Thank you, Jason.
Okay, as much as it's been on my mind for a couple of months now, in just this short conversation, you know what? I agree with Amy. We both have struggled with that same kind of idea of it, but you've come around, and what you guys said earlier, you're right. It is a grant that we're giving. I think maybe the best, I mean, I'm thinking about my kids, maybe the best thing for my kid to excel is to get to ski, because that keeps them happy, which keeps them engaged, which keeps them excelling in school. So I withdraw my earlier concern, and I agree with Jason. I would approve the next 3 line items on the state's letter.
Is that a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we allow all 4, or the addition, since we already moved on the first one, items 2 through 4 on the questionable items. I move that we approve those.
Second.
Okay, Taylor, I'll let you pick. Jason had a second, so did Adrian Holly. It was acquired. Got it. Okay, the motion's been moved and seconded. Further discussion of the motion.
if I could speak to my. I just wanted to say, I really think parents, really the biggest concern I've heard is that they'd like Amazon back because they'd like to spend less money purchasing their items. So I do think overall, the vast majority of parents are trying to be fiscally conservative. They're trying to have their money go further. And so I'm really not concerned that they're buying $500 airplanes. I think they're trying to spend their money.
Is there really such a thing? Just
I
okay.
I think so
Okay.
actually, but I'm not gonna buy another. So.
Well, I think it's like getting concerned with that outside that maybe doesn't even happen at all. Somebody might want those, you know what, somebody might want those, but for the most part, you're right. Everybody's just really wanting some things to help their kids be more successful.
Right.
Could be the Air Jordans. That might give him the confidence to get Air.
That's right.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I
And I could see all the lips, so we're the sounds. All right.
Heather's smiling.
Yes, Heather, this is a good day for you and for us, because I mean, that's also a couple of items that we've been talking about. Now, the last thing on, or the other thing on this is what, Heather, what are we deciding? What did you ask us? Did you, you got all of it?
The
Okay.
last was just the information about what we've been doing with the things that were flagged as ineligible. That's what that last part was. But yeah, those 4 bullet points were.
Okay,
All
right. Wonderful. Okay, well then that moves us into item number 5. And again, these are recommendations we've been tracking since we were first started. Some things we got to. One of the reasons for the work session was that we could continue to work through these. Some take a little more discussion than others. Just because of the way that my brain works, could we stay on page 5 and continue our discussion of eligible expenses while we're kind of already in that zone? So based on the action that we just took, then A and B and F would be covered in that. We'll put today's date as a yes in those. And then we have 1, 2, 3, is that right, Allison?
Yep.
3 items that are open for conversation and discussion.
And these are on here as results of previous panel meetings,
Right.
suggestions or
Some things that came up. Okay, well, let's start with C. So I'm on 4.0. 4.1 C.
That's where I was headed.
Fees associated with non-public school educational services. So Amy.
Madam Chair. So homeschool co-ops, I addressed this a couple of meetings ago, actually, in this room. So the homeschool co-ops, most of them are 501c3s. Our homeschool co-op personally is very, very pricey. And I would just like to make a motion that those are approved vendors.
Specifically homeschool co-ops.
Well, I
That's
don't
what-
know of any others. Maybe I should talk about it first. I don't know, but
Let's talk, withdraw your.
let me withdraw my
I'm
motion.
gonna ask you
Let me
to do that
talk
so that
about
we
this
can kind of
first.
talk a little bit more.
So I'll
and
give
make
an
sure.
example. So the co-op we go to, you pay $160 just to join for the semester, each semester. And then you pay $160 for one semester class just to sit in the class. Then you pay the teacher a fee and you pay for your materials. So my daughter's sitting in an English literature class, that's $160. Then I pay for the course materials. And then she's sitting in a biology class, and because it's 2 class periods, it's $320 for the semester. Then you buy the books, the materials, the lab fees, everything in addition. So that's just for 2 classes. Now, if she wants to take more, then you pay, the extra, whatever that is. So $160 for another class, materials, fees, etc. Then you pay for, if they're there for a study hall, you pay for that, lunch period, you pay for that, etc. So it adds up really fast. So it'd be great to be able to use this grant to help pay for that. And it would barely cover half of a semester of a co-op.
Are all co-ops 501c3, 3c3s?
All of them that I've checked into are, but that doesn't mean that they all
Right,
would
okay.
have to be. No.
The reason I ask is, the example is, for C is homeschool co-op, but non-public school education, that's much broader than just a homeschool setting. And so I just want to make sure that we understand, what all those things mean. Barb?
I just wanted, how is that not basically tuition? I mean, it sounds like it's it's called fees, but it really sounds like tuition. And that, we address that in D is in terms of supplementing tuition and fees.
May I?
Yeah, go
Madam Chair.
ahead, yeah.
So Barb, depending on the co-op, like the co-op we were in last year, the parents taught the classes. The co-op this year, it's still parents teaching the classes, but most of these parents are certified educators, which is so nice. And so it's not I don't know that it's a tuition. It's not structured like a school, really. You only go one day and then you're home the rest of the day. So the parents are teaching the rest of the week.
But it's still a payment to get educated.
Now, really,
Right.
C and D are the same thing, as I
Yeah.
look at that. Don't you think? I mean,
Right.
What is home?
But
Yeah.
it's not private. I guess you could,
What's the
But-
objection to?
but private is non-public, so.
but it's not a public,
Oh,
Jody
Jody
was just shocking.
sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, I'm just wondering what the objection to tuition is.
Well, hasn't the I think the senator, she addressed that when she came and spoke to us, was it was not to cover tuition in terms of this grant program. I don't,
You cut out just a little bit, Barb. It was for what?
sorry, when, I thought tuition was specifically excluded from the grant program. And when the senator came and spoke with us, I thought that was one of the things that she addressed, was if it was to go towards private school tuition, which I understand there's this distinction between private school and homeschool, that wouldn't have been supported enough to get it passed. And I could be misunderstanding, but that was what I thought I understood, is to make sure that tuition was specifically excluded from the grant program. Am I Heather, is that correct?
We do not approve tuition currently.
Right, tuition was not a part of the
Yeah, I thought it just wasn't part of
program for the second iteration, I guess, of it. Because we're this is like the third iteration.
Right. Madam Chair.
So is there
Fees.
right, so I guess what I'm asking the panel or Amy is what you're thinking about. Well, if we take C and D separately, if you're wanting a discussion on the homeschool piece, maybe that is called out, fees associated with homeschool rather than the blanket non-public school, because I think that's covered in D. Oh,
I'm just wondering how it's different from what we already have approved, because right now there's religious curriculum on the marketplace, correct? Right, Heather?
Yeah.
Okay, and I assume that's under eligible expenses B, right? It's like textbooks, curriculum, and other
We
instructional
allow like
materials.
textbooks and curriculum vendors on the marketplace.
Okay, so is what you're asking different from
what already got
textbooks,
approved.
curriculum? Yeah.
That's a good consideration. I see what you're saying, but the recommendation that we just made could encompass the curriculum and so forth associated using your daughter as the example,
Right.
that you could use those to buy the books for
Yes.
the course.
If
That-
classes are included now, that's our recommendation, but statutorily, the curriculum's already allowed, right? Right?
So currently, tuition is not allowed. I see what you guys are, what you're talking about. So you're saying a homeschool and that is their education. They're getting their education through that homeschool co-op. And so that would be tuition.
No, it's,
No,
you take like a class, it's like, I call it an a la carte, that's what so it's a class, like you pick a class here or there.
So it's like, so then what would be different than what?
Yeah,
is
that's
you
what- and
said?
that- yeah,
So
that's
it's a
what-
class, right?
Holly's connecting some
So
dots
the
there.
reason why I'm asking is, so the co-op would sign up as a vendor
Mhm.
and you would take a class. So the parents pick and choose for Thursday class, in this case.
And those classes aren't used to like ultimately graduate from high school.
Oh, no. No, it's like an a la carte menu you pick to take a class.
So it's like an extracurricular class.
It would be like if I chose to take a class from the local high school.
Thinking that
For
we
credit.
covered that.
Well, like if a homeschooler chose to take a class from the high school.
Yeah, no, I think the action that we just took
Yes. Barb has her hand.
covers that. Barb?
Hi, Amy, how you're explaining that though, I mean, it sounds like tuition, like if you go to a junior college, you pay tuition towards the classes, based on what classes you elect to take from that institution. So I'm just having a really tough time seeing the distinction between a tuition and a fee if they're both for getting the education that is kind of required to further whatever grade level the child is in towards their graduation or advancement. So I'm just having a really hard time seeing that distinction, because it does sound like it is, I mean, there's a class, and in my mind, a class is something that's taught outside of, you know, whatever school it is, whether it's the home school or a private school or a public school, a supplemental class, where what you're describing to me is an essential course. And that seems that would fall under tuition. It could be a distinction, but just wanted to voice that that's how it reads to me.
I suppose, depending on where you're standing, they have a different, obviously there are different perspectives on this. I tend to believe that the action of classes and what you've described, that would become eligible if based on, you know, what we've just directed or allowed the board to broaden to in the situation that you've described, where you're paying for a class, that would be covered.
Well, and we're,
Without it being a separate item itself.
right, well, and we're covering educational equipment for educational activities. So I guess,
I mean, I don't know.
Well, as I say, maybe a distinction is whether or not it's a class for credit. So if you're taking a camp, that's a camp or a class that's not for credit, then that's eligible. But
Okay.
If it's a class for credit, it's not eligible. I think that's a distinction.
Right.
Right?
but then we're gonna need to go back and talk about camps and classes and if they're receiving credit.
But in these cases, I don't think they would be.
They oftentimes you do for camps and classes.
We get credits for them. Okay, well,
But do we care?
Nobody currently on the marketplace would be eligible to get like a class for credit.
yeah, I don't know how
Really?
that would
Okay.
transcript
Okay,
into a public high school or junior high or whatever. That would be, I guess there's the Learning Everywhere bill, but that is,
yeah.
but you don't.
Do we want to limit that? I don't.
I don't know. Okay, well,
Superintendent Joni has a question.
Joni?
Thanks, Allison.
Not clear on why we have an opposition to a tuition or a fee. It seems like if
Well, we're gonna get into that here.
all of this would roll in together and we're good to go.
Okay, I guess there's a couple of ways. We can do nothing with this one if some feel like classes got taken care of, or this, you know, that example rolls into the action that we just had. You could also have a motion that's specific to homeschool students. Because in this instance, that's exactly what you're referring to. You're not looking for a broad brush of everywhere, anywhere. You're looking for a specific niche of people that would get the grant for homeschool. That's appropriate. And then the third thing is we look at D, which it would be, I mean, public and private, and I guess you could use private, you could think of that, you know, put a slash and just have it be open everywhere for everybody, regardless, for tuition and fees. Is there something specific you're thinking about with homeschool? I mean, is the panel feeling like that needs to be a specific call out? Again, recommendations to the board. Barb?
Thanks. And Mike, I really like the distinction that you made earlier between is it a course for a credit, because I think that is a good balance between whether something is tuition. And then Joni, just to address your question, I mean, having public funds go towards private or outside of public school tuition has been, you know, a very hot point in the legislature the last couple of sessions. And I really think that that is the proper arena to address public dollars going to outside of the public school system that we have. I don't think it's appropriate for a parent panel to be discussing whether public dollars should be going towards tuition outside of the public school system that we are currently funding. That's where I think that's a legislative session that they have not been able to come to an agreement on, or the agreement has been not to do so. And I just think this is the right arena.
So our August 17th meeting, if you look on G, we did approve or recommend that dollars could be used within this program for classes that you get. That you would get credit for. Career technical education, that might be, your welding equipment if the school didn't provide it, but you'd be getting, but again, that all stays within the public school setting, public dollars to public school credit. And so I guess I'll come back to, before we get into the, well, Barb, I can see where you're coming from. You don't distinguish homeschool from a private school as far as fees or tuition is concerned. And I'm hearing, Amy, that for you that is different. So what would you like to add?
Well, I feel like for G, there's credit in this section.
Mm-hmm.
There's credit being received. Homeschool isn't necessarily private, so I'm not asking for private, although I would like to go there, but I won't today.
Well, we're going to.
But, okay, we will. But I'm asking right now for these homeschool fees, I don't think it matters if it's credit or not, because we've already set precedents in G. There's credit all over in G.
True. And again, that credit is obtained through the public school setting.
And this is a whole nother can of worms, but I have already mentioned for a couple of years that when my son left the public school system, he had a folder of $4,100 of advanced opportunity money. And as soon as he left the public school system, he had $0 of advanced opportunity money, and nothing changed. I paid the same amount of taxes. And he was the same kid, but one day he was worth $4,100. The next day he was worth $0. And I think that's really sad. And someone was,
well, and now that's opened up where those dollars can go to private schools. The advanced opportunities.
but he wasn't in private school. He was a homeschool
Gotcha.
kid.
He
And
left,
so-
he left PACE's stuff.
Yes, and so that's sad to me that, our public school kids get the 4,100, give or take a couple of dollars. And our private school kids get a little under 1,000, and our homeschool kids get $0. And that's sad to me. I think that we need to do some work there. And now we're looking at this. And I'm saying, I believe that this grant should be available for homeschool fees,
Well, then,
credit or no credit. It's very expensive for parents to pay that out of pocket.
so maybe C, to make the distinction between C and B, as separate discussion and action items. C could read fees associated with homeschool educational services.
And this isn't a religious
If
discussion.
that was the example, that was the example in parentheses. I know that's why it got brought up. So maybe we just define that right here in that item as whether or not the panel wants that as a recommendation, but fees associated with homeschool educational services. That would include a co-op or whatever setting of, a family determined work for them in homeschooling. Does that fit better for what we're
So
talking
moved.
about? Okay,
Thank you.
there's been a motion,
Seconded.
seconded by Amy. Further discussion of the motion. All right, we will call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Saw Joni with an aye, I believe. Thank you. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, so we are 3 in favor and 2 opposed, and so the recommendation will go forward to the Board of Education in October. All right. We want to take a little 10-minute break. We've been in here for about an hour and a half. It's always good to get up and stand up and kind of walk around for a minute, use the restroom, out the door and down this hall. So those that are online, we will come back at 3:10. So we'll recess until that time. We will always try to be timely. Oh, Laura's here. Laura, welcome.
Thank you.
Smiling after a day in your class.
Oh, it's always good. Just sometimes loud, but have a good group.
Well, thank you. I know it was, we knew it was going to be challenging when school started, so thank you so much for.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's definitely a balance.
I believe it. We are on page 5 of the advisory panel recommendations packet. And we've just, because we acted on some requests from the Board of Education, it just made sense to keep kind of going down the line of eligible expenses. And we're on 4.1D, public and private school tuition and fees. And so thinking about what was, I don't know if, I'm thinking about some of the things we've already done. Are public tuition and fees included in G? I mean, does that? I mean, I feel like that motion kind of captures, I don't know. For sure it is an F. I mean, that's your pay to play fees and, you know, some other things related to public schools. I guess what I'm trying to define, or not define, is to direct, is the conversation so that we stay, we don't get into this, what's public, what's private, and make, you know, D specifically about private school tuition and fees. If we feel like the public area has been covered in prior actions. Seeing some heads nod yes. So why don't we, I'm just gonna take my pen and on D, I'm gonna cross out public and then let's open up the discussion specifically about private school tuition and fees. I know we've kind of been touching on it as we move down this list. So let's dive in. Amy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know when Senator in her talk, she talked about maybe splitting up the class fees, the science fees, books, and the sports. When she was here. Sorry, forgive me, I have a minute. And I wonder if we could talk about that, splitting those things up.
Sure.
Because we did talk about it being a 501c3. And I do wonder, I mean, we have everything but private school in G.
Would a different but same way of approaching the discussion be to have a discussion about anything related to private school? I think if we get down into whether it's tuition or whether it's fees, I hate to jump over the fundamental question of whether or not this panel is supportive of making a recommendation for anything related to private. And then if there's some comfort level, then you keep going down the line. If there's not a comfort level, then we don't take the time discussing, you know, details of a larger conversation. Is that fair? Laura?
So I have thought about this one quite a bit, especially after the senator spoke to us. I think it's important for us to acknowledge, I understand that it was her intent originally that this be possibly included. However, there were concessions made. And I guess my concern is if we are saying that in order to enhance a student's education, public school tuition is needed, it sends a message that our public schools aren't adequate. And public schools in Idaho are so important. Enriching a child's educational experience is one thing, but using private dollars to pay for public dollars for private institutions just is a very slippery slope, whether you call it tuition or fees. It's something that I think we need to stay away from. And if the legislature takes it up in a different way, then so be it. But this grant is meant to enhance a student's education outside of a classroom.
We know you're in school, you're good.
Yep, they're still rounding up kids to get them home. But I want to make sure that the intent of this grant is to enhance a student's education and to help bridge those learning gaps, and classes and those things are how we do that, not replacing their educational experience with private school, I guess is my take.
Thank you, Laura. Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For one thing, I do not want to see this program to become a voucher program. I think as soon as we start allowing tuition to be paid for by this grant, then it immediately becomes a voucher program for private school tuition. I am adamantly opposed to any public money going to private tuition, and also it is a Brady violation. So I will always and will continue to vote no on anything that has any public money going to private schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Amy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think it's really important that we stop saying public money because it's taxpayer dollars, it's not public dollars. So that's the first thing that we need to stop saying. This money is my money, it's your money, it's my neighbor's money, it's the taxpayer dollars. So we're taking their money, and we need to give parents the choice to choose what they feel is the best educational option for their child. And I am saying that as a parent whose first child graduated from West Ada School District. And my second one went primarily through the public school system. I taught in the Boise School District. I am a public school educator. And so I am a fan of public school education. I will always support public school education. But I think we're not thinking about, well, I don't want to say that. I think it's very important that we recognize that every child has different needs. And so I am never, ever saying that public schools aren't absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm a product. I graduated from Capitol High School. I'm a product of those schools. And so I want to be really careful when I say that. But I also believe that every single child is different. And we need to allow parents to choose what is best for their child. My daughter was not safe in public schools. The police told me she wasn't safe. They couldn't keep her safe. And so that's not an option for my daughter. So I'm not saying that the public schools aren't great, but I can't put her there. So I'm spending a lot of money to pay for her to be somewhere else. So we need to be very careful before we my parents are making the choices that they're making for their kids.
Thank you. Other comments? So the question of empowering parents' dollars as a recommendation toward private school tuition and fees. You've heard from some of your panel members here specifically. I think, again, we've touched on it and been all around it. I don't know if for the purpose of the recommendation, if it matters to have a breakout of tuition or fees. It feels like the question that it's a yes or a no on the private tuition and fees, or no towards a recommendation. Am I missing that with the group? Holly?
May I add one comment? I think everybody's covered most of it, but I just think back to what Senator Den Hartog said when she was here, and it is similar to the argument we just made earlier about allowing, equipment or shoes, but this is only $1,000. And so even if we really believed that this was a good idea, I don't think it would go very far. So to me, it's kind of moot because it won't pay for a private education. So that's just my thought. The other reasons were all covered, but I wish I could put my kids in private school. That would be awesome. It'd be great if empowering parents paid for that, but I think there's enough arguments against it. And ultimately, what Joni said about the legislature making that decision is where I come down on it, is that if that's what they're doing, then we can have that discussion then. But I do wonder if, we're discriminating against private schools by not allowing them, if we're already allowing for credit options in our G point there. So that's the only thoughtful point I wanted to try to bring up is whether we think that that's some sort of discrimination against private providers. I don't think it is, right? Because it's public funds. or sorry, taxpayer funds, general fund money, whatever.
Jason?
Yeah, Madam Chair, so if we would like to move on without a recommendation, is a motion in order to move on, or are we just good to move on?
You just move on. I mean, if.
I think,
Yeah,
my
I think
opinion,
we
the
should just
consensus
move
is
on
clear.
without a recommendation at all in this area or a motion to support it. So if the consensus is, anyway, I guess we'll find out here. But if, yeah, we don't need a motion to move on.
No, I would like to move to recommend.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table to have a recommendation for private school tuition and fees. Is,
I actually think we can add it to G. Is there a reason we can't?
well, I'm gonna say no, only because we've already acted on that one, and so there's no reason. Either way, we have to have it as an action, so let's just
Okay.
keep it as its own item.
Okay.
The motion is on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Taylor, you got that from Joni? You know, it can be tricky here on either side of the screen. Discussion of the motion.
Madam Chair, I do think it is discriminatory not to. And I just remember my son when he went on his $4,000 advanced opportunities and found out he couldn't have his money anymore.
Okay, Jason?
I just urge the panelists to keep the Brady violation in mind, and we are not developing a voucher program here. I would encourage you to vote no on this motion.
Thank you. Further discussion of the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do know that the Blaine Amendment is in full swing. And so I do think we are dealing with discrimination if we don't address it. And again, it's not us, it's just a recommendation. So we will have the AG's office take a look at it and the legislature.
Laura?
I would echo Jason. Taxpayer dollars to private institutions is been a hot button issue in the legislature. And if this is not a voucher program, this is a grant program for families to close that gap. And I think we're getting into a really slippery slope if we are creating this grant into a voucher system by allowing these taxpayer dollars to go to private institutions.
Thank you. Barb, and then back to Joni.
I'm just going to echo Laura and Jason and just say, this last session, there was 105 legislators and they talked about this, and it's just not the role of 7 parents to go over something that is something that's up to the legislature. I agree with Laura. This is for supplementing education, not for paying for the primary education the child is receiving.
Thank you. Joni?
I guess I just want to voice my opinion that I think it is tax dollars, but I think our role is to give every parent in Idaho that applies for the grant a chance to use the money to their best ability. So if their child is best served in a private school, then it's by no means going to pay for that tuition, but maybe it will help them.
Thank you, Joni. Amy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I'm not for a voucher system either, but I am for giving parents the opportunity to choose how they would like to spend this money.
Thank you. Further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Those opposed, please.
Hey,
Aye. Nay.
Allison, you get that? So we are four 4-2 against. That is a recommendation. I know that we have another panel member that's not present today. And so you know, we're going with the votes of those that are here. Okay, well, moving along then to E, transportation costs. I know this has come up here and there. How are you feeling about this? Is this one that you feel satisfied with is as an appropriate use of the grant money?
Chairman, it's just a quick question. Sure. Do you have an idea what that looks like? Are we talking?
I think gas or a bus pass, maybe.
It was a very high level conversation, I believe, at the August 7th meeting of just getting kids to services, including therapy services. So whether that's a per mileage reimbursement or gas receipt or bus pass, whatever, but whether the panel even wanted to consider those items.
Okay. Heather, have you had anybody ask about anything related to transportation?
Yes,
Okay, what does that look like?
well, we currently do not allow.
Right.
So I had a vendor that would pick up kids from their school to take them to a class or something, like that instance, and we had to deny it. But I haven't had any parents like seek full on, you know, we don't do a reimbursement, so that wouldn't really apply for like mileage. That's it.
Okay.
Not a lot of talk around transportation at all.
We don't have to do anything with this one. If you just want to let it stand as is, it's just was a point of discussion. We do not have to move on it. So just, again, having it listed doesn't mean that it needs to be a recommendation.
Madam Chair, I wouldn't want transportation to keep a child from their therapy services. I wouldn't want this to be an issue.
Okay.
If this is something that comes to play, I'm thinking of, there's a therapy clinic, my daughter had vision therapy services, and there were children that needed to have transportation to and from their center. And so I don't know if that ever would be an issue, but I wouldn't want that to be an issue.
Ollie?
I agree with Amy on that, and I would also add that some of these camps that we just voted to approve may also include transportation, and it might be tedious to separate out the camp from the transportation costs, et cetera. I would imagine that this category would probably be used very little, but I would support a motion to recommend that it be included.
Okay, is that a motion or just?
Just a
Oh,
statement,
you're just,
yeah.
thank you. Jason?
My feeling on this is it would be a clerical nightmare. I know how much work your staff does just trying to get our mileage correct for reimbursement. I can't imagine 2,000 people turning in that mileage at the same time. So for me, I would be a no just for clerical issues.
I don't think I'm recommending reimbursement here. It would be more the transportation service company would be a vendor, is what I was envisioning. Is that for
I don't know
clarification?
the specific transportation you're talking about with the therapy center. I guess if there was an established vendor that had already transportation as an offering to parents, but I don't think we would want to get into the case of bringing on transportation vendors, because that would come with another whole host of, like, how are they licensed? Like, that would be, I don't know. I haven't had a lot of transportation issues yet.
Right.
As a teacher, I had a whole bunch, but not in this world, so it's not one of the main things on my list.
Well, I know, like, for busing sports programs, like Brown Bus Company, or I don't know if Brown Bus is around it, but they would be a vendor. That would be take the sports teams into account.
But maybe it would be easier to just make it be a part of the vendor that is providing that. So like, and if you want to utilize the bus service that we're taking to X, Y, and Z, then you pay that additional fee to the existing vendor and not bringing on a whole another layer. Does that make sense?
Okay, if I have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
The, generally speaking, the busing companies want to have a transaction with a single dance class or sports group that's purchasing rather than individual transactions of every student. So normally that's.
So I guess Heather and Jen, based on, I'll throw this question out, based on what you've already seen, do you see this as just as a non-factor for someone being able to really utilize their grant money?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Just once. So
Okay, and it's good to have it out there if it's.
maybe it'll
if
come
it's-
back around. I don't
Okay,
know.
but for right now, you don't see this as something that limits a family from accessing whatever it is because of. Any motions on this? Feeling like there's a consensus to move on, that this, again, is a low priority, it may come back around at another point. Everyone feeling good about that? All right, then, on 4.2, the last item that we have here, is on, direct reimbursements for outside of the marketplace. Discussion, thoughts? Had some time to think it through, Jason?
Yeah, I'm also against this just for clerical issues. If you had a full 5-person staff, this may be a little bit easier, but with the staff we have, I just think that we're asking too much from our department. Thank you.
Okay. Other thoughts, Barb?
Hi, thank you. I agree a lot with what Jason said, but I would like to see if there was a way to put some sort of reimbursement program for, say, specific items such as internet services. I think that was one of them here, allowed direct reimbursement for internet.
Yeah, we have that one.
Something like that, but it would be contingent on getting maybe another full-time equivalent staff or somebody else to help out. I do think there are a lot of fees, or not fees, sorry, there's a lot of charges that parents can incur that really has the spirit of the grant program, but just might be impossible to get that provider to be one of the providers. So it would be nice if there was some way we could help parents out with that, but in a very limited basis.
Does the thought change if we allow direct reimbursements for eligible items outside of the marketplace contingent upon additional staff? I don't know.
I don't know. Figure out what a narrow group of those costs would be. And internet services just keep coming up because I think there's over 300 providers in the state, but that would be really helpful for some rural families in terms of.
Yeah, we did that one on the 17th, so.
Okay. Oh,
so we're in good shape.
Great.
We talked about a lot today, I get it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we started this conversation in a prior meeting and talked about, is the amount of work that Odyssey is doing extremely onerous, or is it the same amount as was done in the previous program when it was a reimbursement-based system? And I think the feeling was that it's probably the same amount. So potentially this is something that Odyssey could do if we give them, the guidelines. Here are the guidelines for reimbursement. You can reimburse X, Y, and Z. That's an option. But what I agree with Joni, and I think a better option would be that we ask parents to first request that the vendor get set up as a vendor, the provider set up as a vendor. And if they will not, then we would consider that as part of the appeals process or something to that effect, so that it's limited in number, that we wouldn't have a whole bunch of reimbursement requests, but that, that they're required to try to get the vendor on the platform first. And that if that's a failure, that we review them later.
It's possible, thank you, Polly, it's possible for us to make a recommendation simply on reimbursements, understanding that the details of that, if approved by the Board of Education, would get worked out. So the good news for us is we don't have to put in place every single business rule about how the reimbursements would take place, but does this group fundamentally believe in reimbursements? Because that can be the recommendation. And then the board, let's say that they said, we're gonna accept that recommendation. Well, here are the things that would have to take place in order for, for that to happen. I think that maybe simplifies our discussion and our conversation around it, I hope.
I agree with that.
So maybe I think it's appropriate to have a motion on the principle of reimbursements. We support them or we don't as far as a recommendation, or not a don't, but here's something that we'd like to take forward to the next step.
Just one last point of discussion. I think this would be really, parents would really appreciate this, I think, because a lot of the comments I'm seeing on Facebook, et cetera, are that people don't know what else to spend their funds on, and they've already bought their stuff on Amazon or whatever else. And so if they're unable to spend it on the marketplace, then this would be a really good opportunity for them to still use those funds and get reimbursed for things that really qualify. It's just the vendors weren't on the marketplace. So as long as they're like in the guidelines, I think we really should recommend that reimbursements under some circumstances become reimbursed. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe
Barb?
Oh, I was just gonna make a motion if we're ready for that.
Sure.
I move that the panel makes a recommendation to the board to establish a process for reimbursement under what the board finds doable within their abilities.
Okay, is there a second?
second.
Seconded by Holly. Discussion of the motion.
Madam Chair,
Amy?
I'm envisioning, to make this manageable, maybe a list of eligible items. To make this easy for you guys, only these items are reimbursable. So this does not domino effect out of control. I'm seeing Jen's face. Does that help? That's kind of what I'm, just for clarification before the vote, maybe if you would have some dialogue here with us.
I think it depends on what the parent panel's intent is, right? We'll take whatever recommendation, take it back to the board. But I think the more boundaries you can put around that, the easier it will be to administer. If that is your intent is for it to be wide open, let's look at the board. If that is.
Well, I think we can do a little bit of both. I think for the overall recommendation, it serves the purpose of the panel to make the recommendation about reimbursement. And then I can bring the spirit of the conversation along with our minutes to the meeting if there are questions with board members on, well, how did they see this? Well, they're concerned about this, that, or the other. That we can still stick with the recommendation about reimbursement and then for our purposes, not worry about what exactly the ins and outs will look like as it's implemented. But we've got Taylor madly typing and we've got, a lot built around the conversation. That's good.
Yeah, I wonder if over time, you couldn't develop some sort of a storefront, right? This Amazon storefront of your own where normal items that parents want, that they can purchase from. That would make this much easier. Because they really want Amazon.
Well, what I'm hearing is, and not just right now, but over the past, reimbursement helps make a more competitive pricing situation that helps with parents. And then there's just some things that it's nearly impossible to pay for up front that really you need to go. And we can't outline every single one of those because we don't know what every single one of them is. We've highlighted internet services because that's an easy one to say, you know, hey, this is applicable anywhere in the state. But I think that, you know, getting into the program, there will be some things that will show themselves as, you know, applicable to that. So, Holly?
That's a great point, and I think that goes to the parent that wrote in about the debate camp she wanted to send her daughter to and paid for it, and was wondering if she could use her Empowering Parents funds for that. I think that's a perfect example because the university putting on the debate camp isn't going to sign up as a vendor for one child, right? Like it's just not practical for them. So I think that's a perfect example with some flexibility. I know Courtney brought up the science camps that she sends her kids to. I think this would solve a lot of the one-off situations that these parents are writing into us about to create. So Jen, do you want us to create some sideboards like you were talking about, or?
No, I think Kevin's version represents.
Okay. Great.
I cannot hear what Jen said. Can you repeat that, please?
She's never heard that. Yes, the question was, does the panel need to create some details around reimbursement? And Jen is saying not yet or not now. So with that, I will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And a head nodding here, unanimous in favor. I'm gonna just look at the time here. We've allotted till 4:30, which can be done, of course, before that. That never hurts for a meeting. I wonder if there's some of these things, if we go back to our number 1 on that first page. Because of our conversation earlier related to those people that were kind of in this holding pattern, I think that we've covered some of these things. I wonder if we couldn't have some action on 1.1 and some of the items on 1.2, just again, based on our discussions around other things.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I would note that just on 1.1 where it says we voted yes, that we just need a correction there. It says grantees that were approved and later purchased ineligible items shall be allowed back onto the program. I think what the spirit of what we were saying was that grantees that were approved to purchase an item that was later deemed ineligible.
Okay. We can get the wording.
Okay, cool. And then my second comment is that I'm just not comfortable really. I think we can skip all of page 1. And just
Okay.
go on to page 2.
You don't want any action there?
I don't think we need any, unless anyone else sees something.
Okay, you feel like what we did on the 17th takes that in?
Madam Chair, I would agree with that. And I think Jen and Heather maybe might have something to add, but I think with us saying that those that had been approved and then found to be ineligible should be allowed back into the program, does that take care of everything else under 1.1 and 1.2?
Well, yeah, because we're certainly, other than being barred, can you be ineligible and not be barred?
I think,
Just want to make sure we
yeah,
don't
I
like
think
accidentally leave somebody out.
is that parents who made an eligible purchase were not removed from the system. So there was no need for them to be let out.
Okay, so no one's been removed,
No
so
one's been removed.
that's, okay, so that goes back to, yeah, maybe unnecessary discussion on 1.1 or 1.2. No one's been removed, no one's gonna have to pay anything back. That's not gonna change moving forward with the program. We have said if for some reason you believed that a purchase was eligible, but it was later found to be, you're not gonna be kicked out. So,
We
okay,
did notify those parents that this was a purchase you made, that please don't make this a purchase again.
Here's the
Okay.
list of things that are allowed.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. Is there any, does anyone disagree that we've either the program as currently constituted, addresses these, or our action on the 17th takes care of the others. Any disagreement with that? Okay,
Madam Chair, do we, now going forward, now, this takes care of this past, going forward, do we need to?
no, this is the forward, because they've already got part of it in working, implemented. They're already implementing that. No one has to be back. You're not removed, barred for life. If you were,
Iteration.
But for the
Yeah.
next,
The next iteration, the statute would require now, the statute says that a parent misuses public funds is to be removed from the system. So if we want to change how that happens, then we need to pursue that legislative change there. But what we have done is we've been able to work with the contractor to ensure that those
that
ineligible.
doesn't, you don't get
that it
into
doesn't
a position. Okay.
Yeah, we won't
So
be in this
the
position.
board office is working with contractors and parents to ensure that parents don't get in a position that they may be removed permanently from the. All right, which is where we want to be. We want to help support informed decision making. Okay, I'm gonna move on then to two.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Could we insert one here under contractor, just a new one? Something we talked about, but
Or
it's
you want
not,
to?
yeah,
Oh,
on
sorry.
number two, on
Okay.
the contractor. We discussed this a little bit, but I would move that we recommend that the State Board of Education work with the vendor to implement a vendor review process for parents or patrons of the system to review their vendor. And Mr. Connor said that that's something that they could develop. So during that meeting, we asked him and he said that's something they could develop. But I'm seeing a lot of people upset with particular vendors. And it would be great for parents to be able to know which vendors are problematic so that they can order from.
Oh, so sort of like a customer review of the
Yes.
vendor. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Not customer, but anyway, that's customer, I guess. Parent review. Okay, so, yes. Oh, thank you, Barb.
Hi, Holly, I like that suggestion. I think it'll also help make vendors be more accountable to the parents. But I wanted to, as we're, reaching our third hour, I wanted to ask the rest of the panel, is there anything under contractor that you want to discuss for maybe why not? Because if not, I was going to make a motion to just approve all of the items under contractor 2.0, including Holly's addition.
Perfect.
yeah,
Is that a motion? Oh, you have a problem?
yeah.
Okay, hang on.
Sorry. I had a few things actually. I just wondered on 2.3, I felt like we already did that in 2.1 and 4.2.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, if we have, then I mean, it
So
doesn't,
just do it again.
right, it doesn't change anything.
Okay, and then in 2.2, I just would like to say, I don't know why we don't give parents and teachers what they need. So I don't know how we measure this. How do we
Sorry.
measure?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
To the maker of the motion, do you mean like, how do we incentivize them? How do
Yes,
we, is that what you're asking?
yeah, how do we incentivize and prioritize this? And because I would just like to say, let's give parents and teachers what they need.
That's a different committee.
Right, so but how are you going to measure this? Who's going to measure this? This looks like we need a whole nother committee for this.
This was the recommendation of Courtney. This is one of hers.
Right.
Unfortunately, she's not on the call today.
If I recall, I think this was specifically when you, in the list of when parents are thinking about choices, we want to incentivize them and maybe incentivize isn't the exact right word, but support them in decision making that, hey, before you buy ice skates, is there a class that maybe, or something that helps your child if they're struggling with reading? That would want to support kind of informed decision-making for parents with learning loss, which, as I recall, the statute around empowering parents speaks to at-risk students and something with learning loss. So I think this was calling out, again, it's a recommendation. The State Board of Education, they can have the conversation on, what does that look like? How do we list that out? How do we, if you receive a grant, in my mind, it looks like this. Parents who receive a grant, there could be accompanying information. Hey, in your region, here are opportunities, to help with learning loss, or here are opportunities for this or that. That it really goes to that informed decision making.
I just don't know how you prioritize vendors when Mr. Hill, the vendor, told us he didn't receive communication from the contractor, that he was even a vendor. He just started receiving orders. And then they cut him off as a vendor. He just stopped receiving orders. And so he had to come up with a parent communication to help parents with their orders. And so there's already difficulty. And so I was actually going to make a motion, 2.7, to improve communication between the contractor and the vendors already. And so I'm concerned that we're already having problems with communication and vendors, and now we're asking for vendors to be prioritized.
I don't think that we're prioritizing one vendor over another so much as prioritizing an educational service over a dance class. Is that what you're, that's not how you read it or see it?
It says incentivize and prioritize vendors offering services.
I thought the conversation was over technology devices. Offering, wasn't that what that conversation?
One of the comments was that they purchased a laptop because there was nothing else on the marketplace available to them. And that's where we got to the discussion, superintendent, about sharing with parents, before you purchase this, here are some other available vendors to help enhance or help support your child's learning.
So maybe we just need to take the word vendor out of there, incentivize and prioritize services specific to addressing student learning loss because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Take out the word vendor.
So what does incentivize and prioritize mean?
Again, I think it's offering information to families, and similar to what we're trying to do with this kind of review process of a specific vendor. Perhaps there's a way to show what educational offerings are available in your town, in your wherever. And I think that actually goes towards what you were saying. How do we increase that communication between vendors and the contractor? Because then they're going to have something that shows you what's available where you are.
How about if we get rid of, how about if we just say incentivize and prioritize offering services specific to addressing student learning loss?
Yeah, that's what I scratched out. Just take the word vendor out.
No, just stop it at learning loss, because it could be student learning
that's
loss
fine.
from any.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Superintendent, we have two notes.
Jason.
Yeah, thank you. I am in lockstep with Amy on that one. I thought that was well put, Amy. Also, on number 2.5, where we would be circumventing local control, I'd be completely against, just blanketly approving every school in the state being a vendor. I think that's a choice of each district, whether they want to do that or not.
That's a good point, Jason.
Sorry, could we vote on the review one and then go back to these, just so we get that out of the way? Is that okay?
So there is one motion, but we don't have a second on it for the vendor review process in the platform. Holly Cook made that motion.
Oh, I didn't know you made a motion. I'm sorry.
No
I
problem.
missed that. Okay, so we do have a motion on the table. I apologize. Holly's motion for a review process of the vendor. And it's been seconded by Amy. Is there a discussion of the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are unanimous in favor. All right. No, thank you. I missed the
got
motion
excited.
part completely. Okay, Barb, it sounds like there's a couple tweaks and maybe a removal. I don't know that, let's start on 2.1. I think we can just kind of go down this list. Is there a motion to streamline the vendor approval process? You don't have to say what you think that should look like, but just the recommendation.
I think I need to take my motion off the table though.
Okay. Oh, wait.
It wasn't an official motion.
Oh, I didn't know you made an official motion.
Oh.
That's okay.
Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Never mind.
No, it's okay.
Could I just? I thought she did make a motion.
She said she was going to.
Okay.
Never.
Well, it's officially removed. Sorry about that, Barb.
I'll make a motion.
Sure.
Okay, let me try this.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try this, you guys. So I move that we recommend 2.1, 2.2 with the amendments. Is that okay to just say that? 2.3, 2.4, and Jason, follow me here, please. 2.5 with this amendment. Give LEAs and Idaho colleges and universities the option,
They already have it.
oh,
So I think you can just do
or
your motion.
encourage them, encourage? No, just leave it, drop it. I was just gonna say,
You do those, I'll make a separate motion.
okay, so forget, I'm sorry, skipping 2.5. And then, I recommend to improve communication between contractor and vendors.
All right. A motion has been made. Is there a second? Seconded by Holly. Discussion of the motion. Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I saw Jody's mouth, so we are unanimous in favor. Holly?
For
Yep.
motion,
Mhm.
I would move that we amend 2.5 to say that the panel recommends that the state board shall work with the Idaho School Boards Association to recommend or to encourage all Idaho LEAs to become vendors in the marketplace.
Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Barb. Discussion of the motion. Jason?
Thank you. I would, this motion's fine for recommendation. I don't think that this motion is necessarily needed. With our motion that was passed the last meeting, I think that took care of the loopholes that we were needing. And believe me, the Idaho School Board Association is, as soon as the state board makes their actual changes, they are ready to move to support this 100%.
Thank you, Jason. Barb?
Yeah, Jason, I just wanted to say, it's so great to have somebody who's on the school board and is so involved in their school district, because you do bring such a great perspective. I appreciate that. I just keep thinking of the motion you made last time, the educational programs, yada, yada. I just think that would be so great just to let school districts know that that's out there for them, because I did talk to a couple administrators here who just thought that was a great idea. So if they didn't know, it'd be nice to just give them the opportunity. Did I put my, oh, sorry, I gotta lower that.
Oh, you're
Can I
good.
speak to that, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Barb. I sat on the executive board for the Idaho School Board Association, and we spent 2 days meeting this weekend, Friday and Saturday, pretty much all day. And I addressed representatives from all across the state about that motion, and they were going to their regions and they were talking about it, but everything's kind of at a standstill right now because we don't have the approval from the state board, so we have to wait until that's done.
And the change in the law. That's great. Yeah. Okay, any more discussion on this motion? Encouraging Idaho's LEAs to become vendors. That was a short version of it. All in favor, please say aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And it looks like we are in favor. Okay. Looking at our time and knowing we've got, we have our Lewiston meeting next week. I'm going to, I guess, pull the board or the panel a little bit and ask if we want to wait and go over the program administration in Lewiston. We know that we will still have time for public comment in Lewiston, and also we will be able to take what we've worked on today, which has been a considerable amount of work, frankly, folks, and refine that and bring it back to the group. Our October meeting is, our next week's meeting is designed to get our recommendations nicely put together with a bow tied on them so we can get them in the board agenda packet for their October meeting. Allison?
Okay, for item 3.6 of the panel members that returned the rubrics in advance, all three of those were in favor of making this recommendation.
Okay.
And it sounds like from the conversation today, so perhaps we can do a motion on that today. Address the others.
Okay, we sure can.
I think we only have 5 more items.
Want to
And
keep going?
I think we should
I'm
just get
totally
it done.
good with that. And then just bring everything finished to the board. Totally good with that. Okay, well, then let's start, let's start with 3.1 and we'll just work our way down knowing that 3.6 will be an easier one. All right. Allow for all students to access services. Jason, I think 3.1, I think we got it in your motion last time. So I say we move on from that. I don't think we need to, that's redundant at this point, in my opinion. We did the other two. Move faster through the awards that. Yep.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
All right, I move that we recommend that we move faster through the awards process and shorten the duration between the waves.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Holly. Any discussion of the motion?
Just one item of discussion. I'm just wondering if we want to incorporate that piece where we decided to change the start month so that it aligns with the school year. Did we already pass that? I can't recall.
No, but we
No,
did,
but
if we
that-
didn't, we
we
did
may wanna
have a lengthy
incorporate
discussion about
Yeah.
that.
No, I think we could add that to coincide with start of school year. Yeah, that was in my notes as well.
And Madam Chair, we did talk about the first wave being a little longer. I mean, staying the same, not shorten, maybe not shortening it quite as much.
Okay.
The statute determines the timelines.
Oh,
So
there you go.
recommending.
Recommending
that
that
happen.
change. Okay, we
Right.
can do that. So Holly, is your motion to include in alignment with the start of school?
We did that in 3.3, suggest program timeline. to
Oh,
align
there
with
it
the
is.
start
No,
of
I
school.
was right about the items. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All
I
blending
withdraw
into each
my
other.
comments. Thank you.
But you started, who
There it
made the
is.
motion? Oh, Amy. Yeah, so is there a second on the motion? Holly is seconded to move faster through the awards process and shorten the duration between waves. Discussion of the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 We are unanimous in favor. All right, moving down then to 3.5. This is on increasing the number of eligible students. So the first bullet point, the allocation cap to increase that from the current cap of 3. Discussion, any action that is wanted by the committee? I'm seeing head shake, no,
Madam Chair.
yes.
I would move that we increase the eligible student K through 12 allocation and the cap of the awards at 6 per household,
Up to 6.
up to 6 per household.
Okay, is there a second on the motion?
Yes.
Okay, it's moved. Amy has made the second. Discussion of the motion. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. 2 ayes, any opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Okay.
Nay.
I heard 3 nays and I heard 2 ayes. I'm not sure. The chair is in question, and so could we just, yeah, maybe just do that again. Okay, so all in favor, virtual hand or real hand? 2. Opposed? We'll do a hand. Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right. The next bullet point then is allow all eligible students within a household. I don't know if that one's sort of related to up to 6, but anyway, it was brought up in a meeting, so we're gonna talk about it. So any eligible student within the household that's within that K-12 age range to have a grant up to $1,000. Is there a motion to move forward on that one, or we want to just move on?
This one would require a change in statute, correct, Jim? This will change the number of eligible students per house.
Well, I'm going to take the silence as a move on.
Could I make another motion?
Not sure what the question is. Are you referring to the second bullet point in 3.5?
Yes, sorry, Joni.
Yeah, I would like to see it that if it would go across the board. So if you have 6 students in the house and only 3 are awarded, then all 6 are able to utilize.
Okay. Well,
I see what she's.
I think this is if you have 6 kids, but only 3, because you can only get 3, but that money could be distributed amongst all the children.
I think that what this is saying is that there's no cap on the number of eligible children in the household,
Yes.
and all eligible children will still receive $1,000.
No cap.
That's helpful. The previous one before it was amended was to increase the number of awards, but keep it at 3 per household. So if you were to increase it to $2,000, but still keep it at 3 per household before the modified motion. And then the second point was to just allow all eligible children within a household to have access to the $1,000 for the grant.
I have clarification. I just wondered, so when Senator Den Hartog was here, I asked whether she wanted us to make recommendations to the legislature that for things that they would have to change, or if she wanted us to make all the recommendations to the board, and she said all the recommendations to the board. So are we able to make recommendations even if it requires statutory change?
Absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're all on the same
And then
page.
whether or not the board takes them and does anything with them, but we can sure make the recommendation. So in this case, all eligible students within a household could receive in a household to receive up to $1,000 per eligible student. I think that's different, Joni, than what you're saying.
I agree. Is the other point in here somewhere?
Yeah, I don't see that. Let me look. I did the last 2, so no. So I think if what I'm hearing you say is, again, using your example, if there were 3 children or 6 children in the family, but only 3 got the grant because the cap is at 3,
Right.
that money could be distributed to be used amongst all 6 children.
Correct.
Is that what I heard? Okay.
That's what, yeah.
Right. Okay. From you. Right. Barb?
I was just gonna make a general comment on this section is, I really think that in order to maximize the number of families that get to benefit from this, I think Jason addressed this one time before too, is keep it at the $1,000 and not increase the amount. And I do think the cap at 3 per household just allows more households to be able to access the grant funds, because if we look at the first go around of the grant, in that first wave, there were over 35,000 applications. And with this next round of grant funding, we're at 30 million. So that's really only 30,000 participants or recipients of the grant. So I think in order to make sure that we're serving as many students as we can, keep that 1,000, not increase it. But also, I mean, unfortunately, if you have more than 3 kids in your family, there is, you know, you're not going to get as much per student as somebody who might have 1 or 2 or 3 students in that household. But I think by limiting it to 3, it really helps make sure that as many families will be able to participate as possible. So I would just recommend we stick with the program as it's written, $1,000, no more than 3 per household.
So, Joni, I'll let you speak to this, but I think the difference, Barb, is not expanding the program to have a family access more money, but allow a family with the money that they get to make, to divide that up amongst more children within their own family.
Joni, I'm sorry. I was going off of what was in that 3.5.
Right, yeah, I think.
No, I think yours is great. Spread it out between, if you have 5 families, you spread that 3,000 out. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Jason?
Yes, thank you. I would also be supportive of Joni's recommendation if we were to make that a motion.
Joni, you wanna?
But K to 12.
K to 12, yeah,
Okay.
we'll still keep the K-12
Right.
in there. Joni, are you good with that as a motion then?
Yes.
Okay,
How do you, how? Will you repeat what you're motioning? What I'm motioning?
yes, no, so the motion would be to allow all eligible K-12 students within a household to use their grant funds for, and well, this is clunky, but yeah, to let's see,
Any eligible student in the household to use family funds.
there you go. Any eligible, the grant funds awarded to a household can be used for any K-12 eligible need. We know what we're trying to say, we've said it, it's just very.
Second.
In a second that, wow, geez, yes, second that mess. So Joni's made, well, we've all made an interesting motion, but she's gonna put her name on it. And Jason has seconded that discussion. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? I looked down for a quick second, so I didn't see that any. All right, and then our last item here, 3.6. I think this is our easy slam dunk one for this section. A motion to.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we recommend adding at least 1 FTE to this project.
All right. Seconded by Barb.
Party in Laura's classroom.
Any further discussion or any discussion of this motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Look like we are unanimously in favor. Amy?
Madam Chair, I just have a quick question that has been asked of me. Applicants that apply for the grant are, if say I'm number 408, do I hold my spot while I go and grab my information? Homeschool applicants have asked me, they say they've lost their spot because they need to go get their birth certificate. And like, so they said that they were unable to qualify, they lost their position and did not qualify. They would have qualified.
Applications can be started and stopped, so it's the got half of the application.
But
So
like
that they mean by
homeschool,
losing their spot,
homeschool
that-
recipients, they need to have a birth certificate and public school students don't because they already have that. Because they're in the public school system. And so they lose, we only have so many grants.
Yeah, so you don't receive funding until you've been deemed eligible, like fully verified.
Right.
So we need all of that information.
So if their applicant, like, does their spot hold as they come in? Like, as you receive their application?
So you're not awarded until you're deemed wholly verified. So your AGI has to check out and your student K to 12 age status.
All
needs
has
be
to check
verified.
out?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so you're not
Fine.
saving a spot by starting an application, it's upon completing the application.
right. So
If
it's
somebody
good.
doesn't complete an application, it's simply.
So the concern is that I'm hearing from these homeschool parents is they have that extra step. And so it's taking them longer to complete their application than it takes for the public school students.
I think that we built into the system the ability for them to upload when they start their application. So that exists now, moving forward. It came on board pretty quickly though. And so as long as they're putting that in right when they submit their documentation, the rest of their stuff, I don't see why it would be a hindrance.
So there's something new that's been added for the application
it-
process to make it easier to get.
Yeah, like they just
Okay.
automatically are asked to attach their documentation, so.
But do our public school kids need to submit their birth certificates too?
No, they are verified through our, I don't know what we
Because
call
every-
downstairs, but
I see, because every student will have an identifying
Right,
number.
each of their EQID, if they're public school student, they're not a licensed student.
Right?
How do you verify that?
for the private school, the school, they can submit a birth certificate, a passport, the state issued ID, something that's essentially gonna tell us their age, their birth year, so we can make sure that they fall within those school age.
Right, to K-12, right? Okay, so is there a way going forward for us to hold the spot of that and when they go and get that? Because some families don't have that information, they have to go request that, and so they're losing that application process.
I think that actually, I know I feel like a broken record, but I think that might actually, would need to be a statutory change because I believe the statute says the award to eligible students. We would have to move that to award at a different, like there would have to be a different language around.
Right. Right, no, I'm not saying change like how they're, who is awarded, but is there a way to like say, okay, they were number 2,580 and hold their spot and give them 30 days to get you that information, or 15 days or whatever. I'm just curious, I'm trying to get information back to people.
Yeah, I think that's something we would have to think about. I'm not sure that that's possible by a statutory change.
Okay, all right, thank you, I appreciate that.
And that may fall into that streamline the process
Yes.
thing, you know, that could be under there, that there's little, I don't know, niches of things where, hey, we've identified this, that, or the other, that can be a part of what the recommendation looks like on the board side,
Right,
so.
I just am
And
trying to
not
make it,
say that a statutory change is not possible or not desired.
Right.
It's just, it's
I just promised I wanted to come back with that information for them, thank you.
Well, folks, congratulations.
Sorry, I have one more
Yes.
motion. I would move that we create, or that we recommend that the State Board of Education create a parent-initiated vendor setup route. Something we discussed previously, where if a parent wants a vendor on the marketplace, then they can submit, I would like CenturyLink Internet. And that goes to Odyssey to then contact the vendor, however that plays out.
Is there a second to the motion?
I mean, we do that, I don't know.
Okay, just for the sake of the discussion, so Amy has seconded the motion. So Heather, is there something that's already in place there, or is this just like
I sent that to parents already, and I think that language is out in the FAQs, so I don't know. I mean, I guess if you guys move that forward, I could think of additional ways to make that.
We can use
Easier for
the motion
parents.
to emphasize.
Yeah.
Thank you for that,
2.1.
Heather. The goal of this would be to get that off of your plate and have it be automated by Odyssey, that they send out something to the vendor so that they can sign up and you wouldn't have to do anything manually on your side. So
Okay, Barb,
I know we're getting ready to wrap up, but I did have two other suggestions I wanted to make to discuss, to suggest to the board.
so
Do you-
Barb, we have Holly's made a motion, so,
Oh,
no, that's okay, keep that thought.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you guys very well, so.
So the motion is for the State Board of Education, or it's part of the program, the Empowering Parents Program, to create a parent-initiated vendor submission process, something that could be automated by the contractor.
I'm sorry, Holly, I didn't realize that was a motion.
That's
I didn't-
okay, and Amy has seconded that. So what, you have a?
I was just, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, this is great because as Courtney had discussed earlier, for those remote communities that are struggling with finding vendors for their kids, I think this will really help. And may even alleviate some of that reimbursement piece.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Like we are unanimous in favor. Okay, Barb.
Sorry, I apologize. I got stuff going on here and hard time hearing. I apologize. I know we're getting late. There were a few things I wanted to suggest. Would you like me to hold on to those until next week? Or I was thinking maybe just to mention them for food for thought for next week.
Why don't you mention them and then we can decide what we want to do.
So, one we had briefly talked about before, I wanted to just suggest if there was a way that the board and the contractor could create some sort of process for unused funds to go back into the grant program. Maybe even, it doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds, but if somebody gets to that 900 and doesn't have anything else, that money might quicker be able to be utilized by another family that might be on the wait list if enough people come together and kind of open up more grants. So I just wanted to talk about that. And then the other recommendation I wanted to discuss was, possibly putting a maximum AGI onto the program. I know that would take a legislative change, but again, it goes back to the numbers that we have. The total grant amount of $30 million is less that initial $50 million. So it's going to serve, 40% less students. And in that first wave, over 35,000 grant applications came in that first wave, which is under the 60,000 AGI threshold. So I just wanted to see if there was a discussion about maybe at some point setting a maximum limit of your AGI for eligibility, just to make sure we don't find any of those students that are in the first wave or second wave that might end up on the wait list that might be at a greater need for the supplemental service that we get from the grant program.
With the goal of having our recommendations presented to you in a way to say, yep, this is what we decided and this is what we captured. I would recommend that if those are two items that if you would like to have separate motions on those, that we do that now. And Laura, I see your hand. I'll come back to you. So Barb, do you want to start on the first one, unused funds going back into or recommending a process by which unused funds?
Okay, I move that the panel recommend the board and the contractor develop a process to allow unspent grant funds to be returned to the program should a participant elect to not use the entirety of their grant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Holly. Discussion of this motion. Laura, is your hand for this one or for something else? Something else, awesome, okay.
Can
Yes,
Barb, will you just also send these to me in an email form later? Please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
nice.
One point of discussion, if that's okay. I just want to be sure that there's like maybe a stop point where we send an email to the parent that says, you know, your funds will be returned. Are you sure you want to do this? Just because with 2 household families, that stuff can get pretty messy. And so just want to make sure there's like that, are you sure? Before.
Right. Are you sure? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes and nodding heads, so unanimous in favor. And then Barb, the other thing I wrote down was adjusting the top end or establishing a new maximum AGI in order to increase those below it opportunities. Is that?
What I wrote down was I move that the panel recommend to amend section 33-1031 to be III, to include a maximum adjusted gross income. I didn't know what recommended to make that, but I did see that if the maximum was say 100,000, that households above 100,000 AGI represents about 17% of our households. And if it was up at 125, that would affect about 10% of the household. So I just wanted to, I don't know what the right number is, but I wanted to contextualize how many Idaho households it would impact if those specific numbers were used. I was able to pull those off of the.
So I think that we've got the motion in there and also the spirit of the motion, that the point of it is to create more opportunities at the lower end. And
Correct.
so, and we can do that. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Laura. Any discussion of this motion? Amy? Oh, sorry. Or Laura?
I was just gonna add, I had kind of been thinking about how to kind of help prioritize that first and second wave AGI, especially as we open up those other waves. I remember in one of our discussions, we talked about how once that third wave is open, it's first come, first served, no matter what the AGI is. So if my family qualified under that initial first wave, but I'm applying during the second wave, I'm still just going to be put in line with everyone. And we want, I think that the spirit of this motion in finding a way to prioritize those families that qualify with that lower income, even during the other waves. I don't know about a cap necessarily, or like adding like fourth or fifth, like adding some more steps in there, or finding a way to, like, if I qualified under the first income bracket, but I'm applying during this, like I get bumped up in the line or something along those lines to just prioritize those families.
Okay, I think that, yeah, I'm taking some notes here. Thank you. Amy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna be very careful in my words here. I think we need to be very careful. Here I am again saying to not judge families, because there are many families that fall in the second and third wave that struggle. We don't know how many kids they have. We don't know if they have insurance. We don't know what their medical bills are. And we are prejudging what their situation is. And I think the 3 waves does exactly what we're talking about. And I taught a lot of kids for a lot of years that were in wave 3 that went without a lot of things and very much need a program like this. And so I cannot sit here and say that I know what those families are going through and that they don't deserve this program or should not be prioritized. And so I'm very sensitive to those kids. and what some of those families and the situations that they're in. And so I have a really hard time saying that I know what they're going through. I can't say that. And so I'm very sensitive to that.
I think the way that the waves work, you eventually get to a point where it's anybody, right? And so I think what I'm hearing Barb say and Laura is that the board take a look at and now it's just everybody part, so that we are capturing those, that we don't know everyone's situation financially or otherwise.
Well, and that's why I've
that
asked
we
for that
make sure
number,
to get there. So,
because I know that AGI of under 60 is at least 75%, and I think it's higher. So I think we are doing a really good job as a state I really do think we're doing a very good job addressing those situations. But I do know a lot of middle income families that are struggling because they have 5, 6, 7, 8 kids.
Sure.
And they have huge medical bills and they're trying to feed their families. And leaving those kids out and leaving those families out, I have a really hard time saying that we want to cap that, because some of those families cannot buy groceries. I mean, they're struggling.
And I think that's what Barb and Laura are trying to get to, is that there is more attention that way. But Barb, you got your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say though, that first wave, I think, is serving under 60,000 AGI? The second wave was 75 and the third wave is 75,000 and above. And I definitely think, that third wave was about a quarter, little less than a fifth of overall. And it's not that many people, but with this new amount at being 30 million, as opposed to that first run of 50 million, it's all a ton of money. But the fact that that first wave was over 100% of what this next application would be, 35,000 from that first wave, that's more than the grant at 30 million can serve. And I just want to make sure that those who are needing are not losing. If they come to the table late because they learned about the program late, they're not losing out, and they get this better opportunity to get these funds.
Thank you.
No, I understand, but I guess what I've been trying to stress for 4 months now is AGI under 60,000 are still being awarded in wave 2 and wave 3. And that's why I've been trying to get those true numbers. And we also need to recognize that people that have an AGI higher than 60,000 are struggling to feed their families. Some families, not all, I understand, but we can't judge those. I mean, we can't just say, oh, they make that much money, they're doing great. Because I know families that are struggling at that level. They have 5, 6, 7 kids. Some of them don't have insurance, and paying insurance out of pocket is so hard. It's hard right now. And so I want to be sensitive to that. I just want to be careful that we're not prejudging where families sit right now.
Recognizing this will also need a statutory change.
Yes.
There's
Right.
information to the board, we can carry the conversation, and should some legislators pick it up, that you all are the first people I'm sending them to work through it.
Yeah.
So I think that will work. Okay, why don't we call, or Jason?
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
We can't. We do have, well,
We have a motion in this.
yeah, the motion's been seconded, so I was just gonna
I
call
would've
for the
seconded
vote.
that.
Yeah, so I was just gonna call for the vote, so all in
So can you
favor?
reread the motion that's on the table?
Yes, Barb,
I move that the panel recommend to amend section 33-1031 2B III to include a maximum adjusted gross income to be determined.
okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
We got 3 nays. Joni in here, and then 3 ayes, so the guy's on the tie. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Jason, or Holly, or excuse me, my brain is fried too. Amy has made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Everybody, and I failed at the beginning of our business to recognize it is 9/11. And so we want to take a moment to honor and recognize our lost ones there. Thank you. We will see you either virtually or in person in Lewiston next week. Based on the amount of work that we've done today, I don't anticipate us needing 3 hours. So I share that so that you can make your own decision making on the travel. Totally understandable if you'd like to participate virtually, knowing that you're getting there will be longer likely than the meeting itself. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, I originally started.
That's fine.
Cool, thank you.
You
You're
bet.
really thrown into the deep end on this one.
Oh, you guys all did great.
We have
So-
read it totally bad.
You did it.
Good luck with that,
Oh, you're-
Lori.
You know.
Absolutely, just right here. Yes, sure can. You have copies